Got your attention now, don't I?
This is the Black Rifle Coffee Podcast. Prepare to get caffeinated.
Well, first off, I have to say, am I lucky that I got you here when I did? Because your call sign is Flake.
That is true. Yes. Yes. Or if there's been, if I've been imbibing, then my alter ego Frake comes out. So Frake, which is quite nice. He's pretty enjoyable.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by none other than Scott Snow. What was your rank when you retired?
Commander 05.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Well, now I do.
Oh, now you do. How about it?
Navy commander, Top Gun instructor.
No.
Oh.
Not a Top Gun instructor, but I ran Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center Ops. So I had Top Gun, Strike, SWITY, and the E2 Weapons School underneath.
So you were up above.
I was the owner of all the airplanes and the maker of all things happen.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's still pretty freaking cool.
It was cool. I got to teach them how to fly the F-16 and beat up on them all the time. So
well, this is where this is going to get interesting. Like, you're an F-14 Tomcat pilot that also is rated in an F-16.
Correct. And F-18.
And F-18. So you got to do the gambit.
Yes, very much so.
I feel like, outside, have you ever ridden in a Strike Eagle?
I have not.
Okay. So that's pretty much the last box that you would need to check of when it comes to high performance.
Pretty cool. I definitely would have loved to fly the F-22.
Yeah.
Yeah. F-35, they can have it. Don't care.
Well, single engine,
It's the fat kid with a calculator. You can't run away. You can't go fast. You can't dogfight. You're like, hey, well, I've got this cool helmet. I'll just look at him and zap him with my eyeball lasers. No, that doesn't work.
No, I was touring the F-35 squadron recently, a couple of weeks ago, out at Eglin Air Force Base, and two things. Number one, yes, that thing is fat. It is a big booted girl. And
thank you, Marine Corps. Go lift, fan.
And when I'm talking to the pilots, I'm like, so does it outmaneuver an F-16? No. Is it faster? No. Okay, then what the hell's the purpose of this thing? Well, it's invisible.
Hang on. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So yes, so you wish you could have flown the F-22 to just see what that thrust to weight ratio vectoring does.
It is an absolute monster airframe. So we always looked at it as the F-22 is probably one of the most survivable in modern combat times, just from the frame, the structure. They kept the speed. They designed it as a fighter, not a jack of all trades, which is usually the downfall of most fighter aircraft. So when you have the Marine Corps wants to go up, down, left, right, it's like, great, that's awesome. But we still needed to land on carriers and, have skinny little legs to do the Air Force thing. Then you just make all these compromises. That's why you end up with the fat kid with the calculator instead of the linebacker with a baseball bat, which is the F-22.
Yeah, you know what? I've never understood. I never understood the decision makers when it came to where we were sinking our money. Because if I had my way, like I feel like we need about 10 more A-29 squadrons. And for those of you who don't know, A-29 is like if you merged a P-51 with an F-18, it's a prop turbo. Is it turboprop?
Yeah, it's a Super Tucano turboprop, and that's the A-29 program that I was running out of Fallon, Nevada. So we had that. The thing looked like a porcupine because we had all kinds of bells, whistles, and antennas and everything on it. But great platform and just super stout. And we're dropping GBU-12s off of it, and you had on station time all day long. So it was great for ground guys.
Well, let's rewind and start at the beginning. Were you flying as a teenager? At what point did it come into your head that you can fly a fighter aircraft?
Basically when I was 4 years old. So I grew up in Bellevue, Washington libtardness they put all the libtardness into the water system. Yeah. And so this is Vietnam era, about 1972. summertime up there is just ridiculous. The sky's, crystal blue, just gorgeous. And we were on the flight path for McCord Air Force Base as they went over to the Boardman bombing range on the east side of the state. So one day it's got to be somebody in the neighborhood. I'm like 4 years old, south side of the house, and I hear this massive noise, and it's an F-4 Phantom about 200 feet over my head in the sun, full afterburner. Must have known someone, in the neighborhood, but it's like, and I'm looking up going, that is what I'm going to do. And that was it. My dad was he was a Navy guy, enlisted for Korean War, but he was at the Boeing Flying Club. So he took me flying from age 6 months on, and then taught me how to fly. Growing up, just flying right seat with him, and then formal lessons in a Citabria, fully aerobatic tail dragger, which was nice because you just have a stick and a throttle, and that's it. That's it. And you're going to learn pretty quickly if you can make it happen or not. So that was all good living.
It's got to be cool though. Seeing F4 fly. I got to control German F4s in my career, which they smoke like hell.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can see them 20 miles away. It's easy.
But yeah, so when did you go to the academy? Did you go to a normal school?
I went to was normal at the time. So University of Washington, and picked up a ROTC scholarship there. And then I graduated in 1990, and off I went down to flight school.
Well, that's pretty difficult to do, though, is to grab a pilot slot out of ROTC, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. But it changes. It's on this whole ebb and flow in timelines. And so it's just one of those that, I was the only one who ended up flying fighters out of my class. And then one of the kids, Chris Schnabel, that I trained, a year behind me, ended up getting fighters as well. But, most guys, they go down, and it's a huge weeding out process. You're basically going to rip through 10,000 people that want to go be fighter pilots to get the one out the top of the pyramid that's going to make it. Yeah. And you just beat everybody out? Was that flying skills? Was it math? Was it what? No, it was just one of those, you need to do well enough academically. And luckily they changed the rules from making you get a Bachelor of Science my sophomore year. So I ended up getting a Bachelor of Arts in History because I had taken all the prerequisite classes. So, my grade point from, help, straight up when all I'm doing is book reports for the last 2 years of college. That was pretty good.
Yeah. And then, so where's flight school at? Is that Pensacola for you guys?
Yeah, you go down to aviation indoctrination in Pensacola. So you start down there, 6 weeks of training, you go, eat some palmetto bushes and do survival and, water safety and all that kind of crap. And
what
then
airframe were you trained on?
I started in the T-34 Charlie, and they had a chance. You can go to Whiting Field, which is just north of Pensacola, or go to Corpus Christi, Texas. So I was lucky enough to get Texas, go to Corpus Christi, fly the T-34 there. And then that's when the weed out process begins, where, you basically need to shine and make it happen. So bust my ass in T-34s, get enough, up rides. So like 65 or 70 aboves was what you needed to get to jets. And so I made it, got jets, went down to Kingsville, Texas. The other training place is Meridian, Mississippi.
Yeah.
So I went down to Kingsville, then started in flying the T2 Charlie, old Rockwell guppy looking thing.
Yeah.
With just tip tanks, and it's just the engines are underneath. So anytime you move the throttle, it does this for you, which is really awesome. So, like a teeter totter. And then so you go through that, and at that time they would take us out to the boat in the T2. So your first trap on the carrier is going to be in the T2.
In the trainer.
In the trainer. Yeah.
And is it a trainer carrier or is it a real carrier?
No, it's a real carrier. Yeah, It was on the John F. Kennedy. So I had the first one there. So
that's just part of their trials or whatever. Is hey,
that's
students.
Absolutely. So you work your way all the way through intermediate, and it's kind of part of the weed out process too. And are you nervous? Yeah, I probably shit 4 times before I even hopped in the jet to go out to the carrier. So it was pretty impressive. So
what is the crawl, rock, walk, run for carrier training? Like
it's you basically, they tell you about it, and then you do a FCLP, which is field carrier landing practice. So you have the carrier box itself, the landing area painted on the runway. And then you have at the time, the Fresnel lens, they have iFlaws now, which is a little more accurate. But you're basically flying the meatball and flying the carrier pattern around and around. You go probably, 10 touch and goes per session. And they just keep.
Are you hooked down on the cables with this, or are you just getting used to hitting the mark and finding the ball? And
you're talking to the LSO, the landing signal officer. So, and they grade every single pass. Yeah. And so you have to get, you got to be this tall to ride this ride. So you have to grade this high before they're even going to take you to the boat. And then go down. We did it out of Jacksonville, Florida. And then out to the carrier we went. So yeah, it was a good time. You do 2 touch and goes and then 4 traps in the T2. And then they shoot back to the
first one. How'd that first one go?
It's pretty awesome because you almost don't have time to think about it. And you realize the approach speed of a T2 versus F-14, F-18 is quite a bit slower by about 25, 30 knots. So you just come around and you're doing everything that you train to do, and you touch and go the first time and then back into the pattern, go and do it again. And then the first time you throw the hook down, that's the eye opener. Because now it's like, I'm flying. Wow. Okay, we're here. And funny story is like after a trap, and then you're like, holy crap, okay. And you're just following the little directors out of there. And half the time they're like, eyeballs on me or you going swimming. It's like, oh, okay, got it. So follow the director or else we go over the side and die. So that helps. And right when I pulled off the landing area, it was one of my roommates comes in and lands right behind me, but he didn't lock his harness. And so he goes and traps and his whole head just disappears. It's like, and there's nothing, but you're looking, it's like there's no one in the cockpit until you finally see his head go boink and pop back up again. So that was pretty awesome.
Did you have any mishaps with your crew?
No, not with mine. No.
Yeah.
But it's.
So they do a pretty good job, like making sure that.
That's part of your baby steps. They're going to coddle you the whole time. There's nobody else on the carrier, so it's not like regular ops or anything going on. And then you roll over and get your first cat shot. So the T2 it was actually a bridle hookup. So they had this heavy cable that they put on the hooks in the front, and it comes around the shuttle, and boom, it goes flying off, and off you go. It's you run it. Power all the way up, flight controls all the way through, hang on to the throttles, salute the guy. He makes sure it's clear, touches the deck, and boom, you're off and gone. And that first cat shot is eye-opening. It's the first time you've accelerated that fast ever. It's the only comparison is really like a top fuel dragster for how fast it accelerates. And
there's a roller coaster that mimics a cat shot.
Yeah, but it's about 5 Gs. In the horizontal. So it pins you. And then, of course they get successively worse. The more stuff you fly on the airplane. So
when you are going through training at this point, what is on the table for you to possibly get vector to? So are you unsure what platform you're going to at this point? You got jets.
Yes, you're going to go to jets. And at the time you had the
A6.
A6 was just phased out.
Okay.
And so it was the EA6B, so the Prowler. And so if you sucked at everything, but you were really good landing on the boat, welcome to the Prowler world.
EA6B.
You're flying the station wagon. You got, 3 other guys in there with you. So they want you to be good. And then guys that, and I don't mean to belittle, but say, they kind of mediocre across the board and mediocre at the boat. They would give them the S3 Viking because, the Who was just like a super forgivable, couch flying through the air. Had the big turbo fans, same motors that are on the A10 Warthog. Okay. But, they basically all they would do is anti-submarine warfare. Yeah. And then they'd fly around at 7,000 feet and just be the airborne gas force. And so that was a pretty glorious mission for them. And then after that, it jumps into F-14s and F-18s. And so everybody, it's of course that's what you're going to put for your first choice. And out of my class, I was the myself and then Brady Bartosh, my roommate. We both ended up with Tomcats, and then my other roommate ended up with Hornets.
Did you put Tomcats or did you put Hornets?
No, I put Tomcats.
And was that because of just the legacy the Tomcat had?
It's such a cool airplane. I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, if you got a chance to do it, it's like, I want to go fly a Hornet. It's like, dude, anybody. I could teach you how to fly the Hornet in 10 minutes. I mean, it's basically.
I feel like I know how to fly the Hornet. I've got about 18,000 hours in the sim.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, I mean, it is that easy. You can take someone off the street and teach them about 10 minutes because the less you touch it, the better it flies.
And so now, did you have the foresight though of, hey, if I choose Tomcats now, eventually these are going away, and I'll jump in Hornets anyway?
No, not really. And there's always this Tomcat Hornet rivalry because you had an automatic cheerleader in your back seat the whole time, taking pictures and go Flake, yay! So that's what the Rio was there for half the time. Is half of it is psychologists, like there, Flaky, you don't have a big head, you're going to kill us both. It'll be awesome. and then all the way to running the weapons. They're supposed to run the radar, and they would run the lantern pod as well, and then the radios. And when you first start out, it's kind of nice because you're bringing a guy into a fighter. You start flying it, and they put a really senior guy in the back seat who's kind of like your sea daddy, and he's going to help you, get through this and make you, a much better platform and pilot. And then the more senior you get, the less and less experienced guys you get in the back seat. So pretty soon, you as a senior pilot, you're carrying this guy all the way through, which can be quite a cross to bear at times. Especially when, I don't know, people are shooting at you and throwing SA-2 missiles at you, and all they're doing is looking the wrong way and telling you the wrong things. It's good times.
So where's Tomcat school at then? Like what was
it was actually, I went through the VF 101 det. So they left, I got F-14Ds, which is the biggest and baddest of the Tomcats out of the box. So you had the GE F-110 motors, full HUD. You had the APG-71 radar that was just monstrous, and all the bells and whistles. And they made 56 of them total. And so they split that up between 3 squadrons. And then when they wanted to kill the demon seed of fighter aviation off the West Coast after Tailhook 91, wasn't there? No. I can either confirm
we'll get into that.
We'll
get into that after this.
Yeah, absolutely. But they took the F-14A and B Tomcats and they pushed them all out to Oceana. So the RAG there just had all the A's and B's. And then they kicked us out of Miramar in 96 and then consolidated all the Tomcats out in Oceana because they had to keep Oceana. It was either close Miramar or close Oceana, and they needed to keep Oceana open for the Dam Neck boys. And so that's where they moved us all.
So what was that first flight in the Tomcat when you sat in that thing for the first time?
It's pretty cool. They throw you in the simulator for quite a bit of time beforehand because one they
ergonomics buttons.
Yeah, ergonomics buttons. I mean, all your emergency procedures, everything. So because you're the only guy with the controls in the front, and then the first 2 to 3 flights, they put a pilot in the back seat to kind of talk you through all the monkey skills of how to fly the airplane, what to do, everything else, and then you get it pretty quickly. And then flight number 3, they throw a Rio in the back, and you're off and going through the familiar racing fam stage and on down the pipeline you go. So
yeah, so like that first day that you're in the air with this thing, like, are you like playing with like how fast can this go? Like,
oh yeah. Well, and you have a set brief. We're going to go and do this and this, and then we'll show you how it accelerates and all that. And it's pretty eye opening the first time you light it. It's because you take off in mill because there's so much power coming out of the F-110 motor that if you take off in burner and you lose one, it'll spin right then and there. They're 9 feet apart, and you've got 30,000 pounds of thrust coming out of one side and 0 out of the other. It's not going to be happy. Yeah. Off you go.
Wow. Now, are you guys as front seaters cross-trained as Rios as well, or no?
No, you'll learn some of it over time. And I would always quiz my Rios and, hey, walk me through the lantern pod and what you need to do and how to do that. So if I get somebody incompetent, not going to name any names, in the backseat that I have to talk them to make it work. That's pretty important stuff. And then you would, from time to time, it's fast forward, but I'll come back to me being in the RAG. But when I was teaching at the RAG, you would be doing the, FAM 1, FAM 2, sitting in the back seat with a new kid in the front. And then you'd also do a performance demo as you went into ACM, air combat maneuvering type of stuff. But it was good you had to learn how to get the alignment and, do stuff like that. So it was all good.
What was the first dogfight that you had with a Hornet? And how did that go? Like, because with this rivalry, did you live up?
Yeah. Well, and you would go and dogfight both, Tomcat v Tomcat, learning the syllabus, but then you go, Tomcat v Hornet, and it's with a, ridiculously experienced, adversary pilot. So, you had at the time VFC 13 on the West Coast, VFC 12 on the East Coast, flying early lot Hornets, with guys that have 1,500, plus hours fighting and flying the airplane. And it takes you time to learn, what are the strengths and weaknesses of each airplane that you're flying. So you learn pretty quickly that, you're not going to outrate somebody in a circle with a Tomcat. You just don't have the degrees per second. But, instead of doing a 18 degrees per second turn with the Tomcat, you go 180 degrees by going straight vertical. And that's where you had these massive tails on the Tomcat. It's about the same size as an A4 Skyhawk wing, was your horizontal stabs. And so you could basically get it over the top and just pulse it down and just basically turn it around inside its own butthole. It was
so you essentially take them, rather than trying to play the game of getting an angle on them in a lateral turn, you just take them up and flip up over, and then they just don't have the power.
Yeah. Because the Hornet, if they have any pylons on it or anything else, it bleeds like a stuck pig. Now, if you have a completely slick Hornet, that thing, much like a completely slick F-16, it's a freaking monster. But once you learn that you basically need to get them in the phone booth and wear them down, but still keep vertical speed. So you need, about 300 knots, in the Tomcat. But once you get them bled down, then you just take it into the vertical, and they can't get their nose back up because they have the limiter, and they're just kind of stuck, just flat. and the one thing the Hornet would always do is intimidate with the nose. So they'd be really quick to get their nose and point it at you. But as long as you avoided that first shot, then it's pretty much over for them. And it was the same way fighting the F-16 against the F-18, is that the Hornet had one chance to get its nose on you and shoot, and there was bled, out of energy, out of ideas.
And then you can just run circles around him after that.
Yeah.
Now, is the aura from the movie Top Gun true in the aspect that those Tomcat pilots from essentially 1980 to 2000 were the best dogfighters to exist?
I'd say yes and no. I mean, they always say it's the carpenter, not the tools. And so you had guys that could fly the oldest F-14A and just beat the living crap out of anybody. And like Snodgrass was one. So he just mortared, about a month ago, but super famous Tomcat guy, and just would absolutely crush your nuts, and you're thinking, I'm pulling G's, I'm gonna kick. No, he's just like, and it's over. So, but there were guys like that, and in time, you learn to be that guy and be able to really dogfight well. But it's just like any cross section of a fighter squadron, you're going to have guys that are great at it, and others that can maybe fly it from point A to point B. So, and they slowly, will trickle off, and you'll find out the best.
Like, was there ever any legends like from the Air Force or something like that that you guys just knew the name, that was like, that guy is deadly?
Yes and no. I mean, their weapons school is really top notch. I mean, they just it's the zero tolerance policy of the Air Force, that if you bum one ride, it's like, no, you're not good enough to graduate. And we do the same thing with Top Gun. Is it's you need to be on your game to make it happen. And when Top Gun was in Miramar, it was one of those, like, you would knife your best friend right in the face to get his slot to go to Top Gun because, it's in Miramar and it's the best of the best. And if you could come back and be an instructor, it's just like that was awesome. Yeah. That was it. And then in 96, when we were scraping everybody out of Miramar, they moved it up to Fallon, Nevada. And at first everyone's like, well, I'm just going to go over here to Oceana and have a real city and everything else. But once you get stationed in Fallon, and this is, farther down the storyline, but you end up loving it and you never want to leave. So it just took time for that to kind of sink in. And most of the guys, once they've been there, go through the school, they're pretty apt to come back if they can to instruct.
Man, it's such a time. So now tell us, what is this infamous 1991 tailhook incident?
There may have been an Ensign Snow, call sign Flake, who was stashed at the time between starting flight school at VR-57, which is the DC-9 squadron out of Miramar. And they used to let us, at that year and earlier, it was all in Vegas, is where they would do tailhook every year. And they would fly, the C-9s, we would fly people from the different Navy bases to tailhook for the event. And so you had everybody coming off of Desert Storm 1. And so they're just lit up and crazy. And I'm just, kind of like the admin bitch. So I'm there, stocking the beers and making cocktails for everybody there. And you'd have an admin. So every squadron would have, their own admin room. And then people would just cycle through and go from room to room to room. And, different drinks here, there, whatever. And end up talking the entire time with all the buddies they haven't seen in forever. But, I'm sure it's just like, being a JTAC, is you can see somebody that you hadn't seen in 3 years, but you pick up exactly where you left off. I mean, there's just, it's like no time passed at all. So that's kind of how it goes. Did it get completely out of hand? Yeah, it did. But, it's one where when in talking to some of the older guys, they're like, dude, that was tame comparison to years past. It's like, ooh, wow. And then, of course, they went on the whole tailhook witch hunt and, tried to hunt everybody down and drum everybody out. It's like, oh, you had fun, not allowed. So all good times.
I think every community has that one year, that one story. We had a TAC P reunion in 2009 where a slip and slide and baby oil was an end state of the night.
Yes.
So when was your first actual kind of putting all these skills to use and doing them in combat?
Really, it was, we were still doing Desert Storm flights in 95. So I left on cruise in 97 with BF2. After I joined them in 95, went on cruise in the Connie. And so we'd go basically fly all over Iraq, taking pictures, everything else, and really, but no kinetic, but we're still flying patrols and just waiting for them to pull something. And so that was, the whole cruise, and ended up, we used to call it gay porn, especially in combat, was the TARPS pod. So it's the Tactical Air Reconnaissance Pod.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you got this 18,000 pound hunk of crap on the air, in the belly of the airplane. And you really have no room or weight for anything else, because now your max trap on the carrier is still 54,000 pounds. And you got this 2,000 pounds, dead weight that you can't get rid of. And, your ball state was maybe 4,000 pounds to 3.8. And I mean, you're no kidding. You needed to land with 2,000 pounds or it's over. So, because it was enough when you get lower down in fuel, it's 20,000 pounds is your max load of fuel, but you have to be at 54,000 pounds total weight of the aircraft to land it on the carrier. And so they would have your more.
If you're too light, what happens?
Oh, too light's fine.
Okay.
Too light doesn't matter. They set the arresting gear at 54,000 pounds. Okay. But it's how much fuel is life, much like speed is life around the carrier. And so you had to be one of the better carrier pilots, like this guy, who ended up having to do all the gay porn and flying the TARPS missions all over, because they knew that if I came back, I wasn't going to miss. And so I'd come back into the pattern and land every time without boltering or going around or having to, night in the bag. So all good.
Yeah, did you ever see a carrier, someone go off or anything?
No, it luckily, I went the LSO route, vice the Top Gun instructor route. And so in doing that, luckily, fast forward, but it's one of the things I looked at it like, okay, what is most likely going to kill me? Is it going to be someone shooting at me? Well, it's going, every single day, what's the most dangerous thing you're going to be doing? Well, it's probably landing on the carrier. And in the daytime, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's an absolute blast flying around the carrier in the daytime, but you get shit weather, or at night, you end up with gray hair or no hair.
Yeah. I watched a shit weather one the other day, and it was like, oh man, that would not be fun at all.
Oh yeah, no. And it's, you're going to be fine at night traps until the first time you scare yourself. And then it's like you concentrate so hard every single time you're going to come down to land. I mean, you're shaking like a leaf when the rest of your finally stops you.
Yeah.
And it's that way every time.
Psst. Caleb, did you know with Black Rifle Coffee's Coffee Club subscription, you can get fresh coffee shipped to you every month? What? You don't even have to go to the store. Whoa. You don't even have to leave your bed.
What? Wow. How did you get in here? You might want to go ahead and join the Black Rifle Coffee Club subscription before one of these guys shows up at your place.
So,
I mean, I was lucky in my career. I got to go out to the George Washington when I was out to sea and watch Tomcat's trap all night. I knew I was lucky for that. Like, I was like, this is cool. Like, very few people get to do that in their career.
We would always take the Eagle guys or Viper guys out to the LSO platform, which is on the back of the carrier. Yeah. So, they're talking to all the pilots coming in, and especially at night, and they just look at us like, you guys are fucking insane. It's like, yeah, well, there you go. This is our life.
This is our ops.
Welcome to the floating prison for overachievers. So
yeah, how was dodging missiles in the second Iraq War?
Oh, it was interesting.
Yeah,
and it's kind of when they have that adage and they say, okay, remember that getting shot at all night long, your heart rate is still going to be higher and faster landing on the boat at night, and it's 100% true. Wow. I mean, because you basically just go right into brain strength to the size of a pea. It's getting shot at on the ground or in the air. It's all the same kind of thing. It's like you're just going to go right back to what you trained. And so now I'm there watching. They would start off. This is over Baghdad. So once we had basically surrounded them, that's when they just started shooting everything off because they knew it was the end was coming and it didn't really matter at that point. Yeah. So they would start with the French Roland, which is really good up to about 20,000 feet. But at night, you're on goggles, you're looking at it. It's just like, here comes a big, bright, shiny object trying to kill me. You're going to react to it just like anything else. So their plan was they'd shoot all these Rolands first that are only good at about 20,000-ish feet. And we're hovering between 25 and 30,000 feet. And so you start reacting to those. They're trying to bleed you down. And then they start throwing the SA-2D missiles at you, and that's the flaming telephone pole. That's the monster that can go up to like 80,000 feet.
Yeah, it's got a ceiling of like stupid, and
yes, 100%. And so then they start heaving those at you, and you're fighting 8 of them on one side. You're doing barrel rolls over them, and they're getting within like 60 feet of you.
How do you defeat them? Is it all just angle, or is it waiting for them to get closer and then juking?
A bit of both. And so you have chaff. So you have all these aluminum strips and everything else. And what we had in the D was a bowl chaff. So on our missile pylons, you had 80 packets on each side. And then your standard in the belly, you had flare. So you had 30 flares and 30, chaff in the belly. So 60 total, down there. But, flares aren't going to do anything for you. You're just trying to get that radar to bite off on the aluminum cloud that you're leaving behind. And basically decoy them to go after that. But for us, just one of those things. Luck is great. I'd rather be lucky than good any day. You have the SA-2s coming up, and they're right where they should be, and they have the target detecting device, which we have on all our missiles too. but it's that little window that as soon as it sees you, it's boom, it blows up and goes off. And these things went up, never went off, straight back down in the darkness. Every single one that got that close. So I really should have been a pink mist at that point, and just hair, teeth, and eyeballs left. But that's it. They all nothing detonated. So they're basically just firing dry rounds at me.
And that thing coming back down to the earth, though, that wouldn't be fun to be chilling in your house.
No. Yeah, well, that's why real estate in Baghdad's what it is these days.
So what made you retire at that point then?
Truthfully, a couple items. So I was on my last flying tour. So I knew it, and it was, I was threatened with an IA, so an individual augmentation. So I'd be probably running a convoy or something like that out of Afghanistan or Iraq, for my last year in the Navy. And so I was able to extend that last year, and you have to put your retirement paper in a year before, and then they have to accept it and everything else. Well, in 2009, I flew with another Tomcat buddy of mine, and I let him go the year before in a Hornet, but he came down here to South Texas to Encinal to a warbird flying with a gentleman that has 40 plus warbirds, multi-billionaire kind of guy. And it's super, just the best of the best airplanes. And so, Opie goes down there and all that. And I'm fat, dumb, and happy. I'm single at the time because I got AIDS, aviation-induced divorce syndrome. And so I'm there in Fallon. I'm playing with, the Top Gun kids and beating up on them 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, I'm teaching skiing at Kirkwood, California. And so it's just, I'm living this fantastic life. I'm living on a hay and alfalfa ranch that has a winery, 14 acres of grapes. I'm learning the wine business from the ground up. I've got a private airplane where I just fly around and go, find women of ill repute to harass in many different cities. So that was cool. But then Opie comes into my office on a Wednesday and he's like, dude, you ready to go this weekend? Go where? It's like, oh, we're going down to that flying thing. Like, okay. So we grab a 2-seat F-16, jump over to Houston on Thursday, spend the night, and hook up with Stuart Fred, who's a fantastic human. And he has a couple L-39s, very, huge aviation enthusiast kind of guy. So he's super great. We're great friends now. Spend the night there. And then Friday we fly down, to this Encinal ranch. So we come down and beat the place up, unofficially. We didn't do an air show because that would be illegal. No. And the transponder failed halfway there. Weird.
Transponder not working.
Transponder no working. And so then land there, pull up, pop the canopy, and with it basically 10 minutes after I landed, that's when she arrived. And that's Lisa, my now wife.
Oh.
So it was.
But you were in a flight suit, so you were.
Oh no, this didn't help. This helped none at all because she grew up as an Air Force brat, and the first look at me was like, well, he's kind of okay looking, but he's a fighter pilot, so he's going to be an asshole. So I didn't even start at the level playing field. I started way down here, and then I had to kind of crawl my way out from underground to get there, and we've been inseparable ever since. So met her February 28th of 2009, got married in November of 2009. And it's been like, it's when you're happy, it's like time goes like that. It's like, I just met her yesterday. We had Merritt on Monday, and, now Merritt's 8, she's going to turn 9 in a couple of weeks. It's like, holy crap, where's the time go? Because time flies when you're happy. When you're not happy, it's a prison sentence.
Yes, it is. Well, so what are you doing now? Because you're my neighbor.
Oh yeah, neighbors. Absolutely, neighbors. So fast forward. So I do a VF2. So that's flying F-14Ds out of Miramar. They move us to Oceana. I go from there to the landing signal officer school. So I instruct at the landing signal officer school and teach full-time at the F-14 RAG. And then so I was the one going out to qualify all the kids landing on the boat, because the first time you go to the boat at night is in your fleet aircraft. So I'm teaching them how to land on the boat at night, F-14, and that takes a lot. That's kind of, cutting the wheat from the chaff and the men from the boys that are scared. So all good things. So go from there, pick up a keg paddles tour So that's a carrier air wing LSO. And so there's 2 that you have on every deployment, and it's usually, you'll room together, but it's one of you has to be on the platform at all times whenever they're landing airplanes. And so it's myself and Zippy, and we'd swap off, back and forth. That's when I cross-trained into the F-18. All my Hornet squadrons are down in Beaufort, South Carolina. Yeah. So I was, I'd go down and train them up. So September 11th was a week before we were supposed to go on cruise. And so that day I'm actually flying in a T-34, getting dropped off down in Beaufort, South Carolina. And so I go and things unfold the way they're supposed to. So I still bounce all the guys up because we're still going on cruise. And so I get everybody ready to go. And then that Thursday I'm flying back up. I'm the only guy in the U.S. that isn't airborne, combat air patrol guy. I'm the only guy flying from Beaufort, South Carolina, up to Oceana in a Hornet to drop it off. So DCAG, so that the second in command can get his bounces done and be ready to go to the carrier. And then, we took off that next Monday. It's like, boom, out the door. So interesting. So that was straight in, kicked in the door for Afghanistan, and, started getting all that done there. Came home, took a knee for a couple, 3 months, and then went right back out with the VF-31 on the Abraham Lincoln. So the Afghanistan was Teddy Roosevelt with CAG-1, and then CAG-14 off the Abraham Lincoln. So that was a VF-31 flying F-14Ds, and came home to see my son born. And so I left like December 15th, and then I get the call New Year's Day, hey, get back here. He's not born yet, so he gets born 3 days later, and boom, I'm in the tube right back to the Abraham Lincoln, and that's when we kick off Iraq and take that all the way through. Come home from that, grab a staff tour once I finish up VF-31. So I go out to Hawaii for 2.5 years, running future ops for that. No, it's not bad. That is that's not bad living. If you got to drive a desk, might as well be a tropical desk.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. So do that. And then I weaseled my way into the op shop at Fallon, and then did that, trained up in the F-16, did some F-18 time, and had an absolute blast. And since I met Lisa in 2009, I couldn't get out soon enough, and boom, out the door I went. So retired September 1st of 2010. And at that time, it almost feels like getting out of jail. I'm sure you had the same thing when you left. Yeah. It's kind of like, woo, nobody controls me anymore. I
what do I
find
do?
out what I'm doing tomorrow at 6 p.m. the night before. Cool. And so do that. Got to, so I met and married Miss Texas, as I like to call her. She was runner-up, but that's okay. But met and married her.
Who's counting?
It's all the beauty without the crown and the crazy. So that's good times. So get here, do some consulting work for the Warbird guy, where I met her, and then branched off, started MCS Universal, which is my government company, doing MD-11 freighters out of Helsinki. So a friend of ours used to own Southern Air, sold that to the Bass Brothers out of Dallas. Here's first world problems for you. I bought these 2 747-400s, and so I put those on dry lease with these guys, but I bought these 2 MD-11s from Finnair, and nobody wants them. So let's build an airline. Okay. So I was there, scouring, pulling all the KC-10 guys and everybody I could round up. So I just did the aircrew end of it, and built up to 4 MD-11s, and then cashed that out. And I started flying the Pilatus back here in 2011, and just built it into my turboprop airline. So it's when you like to be home every night, the turboprops usually get you there. So now it's 2 PC-12s and 3 Conquest 2s, which is the Cessna 441. Which I think was one of the best turboprops ever made, because it does 320 knots. In fact, you got to ride in one.
Yep.
And it's a hell of a machine. So got those, and we just added 2 more King Airs on the fleet, and we're building out a huge FBO hangar complex here.
Big old hangar that we're going to have a lot of fun in.
Oh, yeah, baby. Absolutely. Well, I got some other, off the record stuff that I need to bring in on, but it may involve two extra 300s that we're going to get to go play with. So that'll be nothing but a good time.
They will not be able to keep you and I out of the sky. That's for sure.
Correct. Yes. That's kind of how we work it.
But why do we want them to?
Exactly.
Well, hey, this was great. If you're ever in Bernie and want to stop by the airfield, go see MCS. The hangar's great. The Bernie Flight School's right there, and hang out with Scott and hear some stories about the F-14 Tomcat.
Absolutely.
Hey, if anybody does want to contract you to fly for them, how do they find you guys?
They find us at mcssky.com.
Okay.
And so that's our flying website. And then MCS Universal, that's our service disabled veteran-owned small business. So that's more government sales and stuff like that. But yeah, come on out. Bernie Stage Airfield. Love to see you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Scott.
You bet, brother. Thank you.
That concludes today's training. Any questions?